One Piece movies are kinda interesting. They've been making them for a while now, and yet for as big as the franchise is, the films go as some of the least talked about pieces of media the franchise delivers. For their big budget production cost, their widespread debuts and distribution, it feels as if they're treated like any other menial filler arc before too long. I get it, when you're invested into a series that's as long as One Piece, it's easy to only begin caring about what's actually canon. It's too big of a world to be concerned with something that's ultimately never going to have any sort of impact on anything that's ever going to happen. When you know it's not going to provide anything to the universe, pulling investment from a viewer is a difficult thing to do because nothing changes if you've never watched them. And that's a real shame because on top of being some interesting stories in their own rights, the movies in and of themselves are like a time capsule of what the series was, who the characters were, and what they thought that they could do with what they had at the time. In many instances, the movies were years ahead of what the anime or manga did. It's sad that many people aren't going to experience these films, especially because so many of them aren't readily available on whatever streaming platform you watch One Piece. But that's where I come in. People may not want to watch 15 movies, but they will for some reason watch a very long YouTube video about all 15 movies. I do recommend watching them for yourselves if you can, as I'm just going to be straight up spoiling things. But for those of you who are too lazy and don't care or have already seen them, allow me to start my journey across every single One Piece film. Now, I'm starting off this video with a little bit of an asterisk because One Piece Defeat Him the Pirate Ganzack isn't actually the first One Piece film. Technically, it's a 30-minute OVA, but it has such a unique history with the franchise that I thought it was too important to just skip over. What makes this OVA so unique is that it was released on July 26, 1998. One Piece was just barely over a year old at this point. And the reason that's important is because it completely predates the anime. This is the first ever animated adaptation of the series. As a result, all of the voice actors we've come to associate with these characters for the past 24 years had yet to even be hired. I say all of them, but the manga was just barely past Syrup Village at this point, and considering the time it would take to make a production like this, they probably weren't even done with Syrup Village. So as a result, it's only Luffy, Zoro, and Nami part of the crew. The voice actors do a stand-up job. It's strange to think that these were technically the original voice actors for the Straw Hats. Urara Takano, who's probably most well known for voicing Maria Tachibana in the Sakura War series, voiced Luffy. Megumi Toyoguchi, who voiced Winry in the original Fullmetal Alchemist, Junko in Danganronpa, and Yukari in Persona 3, voiced Nami. But probably my favorite had to be Wataru Takagi as Zoro. Not because it's the best, in fact, it's the most different out of all the characters compared to how we know them. No, it's my favorite because he's the only one of the three voice actors who returned to voice in the actual anime when it got made. The original voice of Zoro is now the voices of Bellamy and Vanderdecken. Yeah, let that sink in. This scene hits differently when you know it's the original versus the new.
何の真似だ、下っ端。その質問にはお前が答えろよ。
The OVA was originally produced for the 1998 Jump Super Anime Tour, which was an event commemorating the 30th anniversary of Shonen Jump. As you would expect, Oda took considerable interest in this venture and oversaw much of its production, from casting the voice actors to, of course, designing all of its principal characters. It was directed by Goro Taniguchi, who most notably went on to direct and be one of the creators of Code Geass. The story opens up with the trio adrift at sea, small boat, no food, and a hopeless situation as they're on the brink of starvation. But hope is found when a plesiosaur attacks their ship. You know, when Luffy's hungry, any sea beast that comes within stretching distance is a food source. Unfortunately, things don't go exactly as planned. Before Zoro has the opportunity to turn the dinosaur into sashimi, Luffy gets bucked off into the ocean and drags Zoro down with him while Nami gets carried away. After washing up on the shore, the two are saved by an armored little girl named Madaka. She takes them to one of the village elders named Skid, who offers them the last of the food that they possess. He tells everyone all about a vicious pirate crew who came to the island mere weeks ago and enslaved everyone. They took all the capable men to use as a workforce while leaving the women, children, and elderly on the island as hostages. And, as you would expect, that pirate was Ganzack. He's using the people he enslaved to create a new weapon for his future endeavors. But his ultimate weapon was the Devil's Tower, a massive structural cannon that's capable of destroying islands. In fact, that's exactly what he intends on doing. Once the islands outlived their usefulness, he plans on sinking the place and moving on. Well, that is, until Luffy arrived. Ganzack is an interesting character since at the time of his debut, Luffy had only defeated Morgan and Buggy, meaning most of the East Blue's most notable and recognizable villains had yet to be introduced. Yet despite this, Ganzack shares a lot in common with many of them. To a lesser extent, he acts a little bit like Buggy, throwing a party after capturing Luffy and having thin skin when insulted. Those aren't the most unique things to Buggy's character, but they were kinda similar. On a much larger scale, he shares many of the same values as Don Krieg, believing weaponry and firepower to be the most feasible signs of strength in conquering the seas. Ganzack even has his own gimmicky armor to use for defense. But probably his greatest similarities are to Arlong. He enslaved an entire island, commanded a giant sea beast, and his actions caused a young girl to hate all pirates. It makes you think if Oda had all of these in mind when creating Ganzack as a means of foreshadowing what was to come for future East Blue villains. Unfortunately, this is more of an interesting look back because being so early in the franchise's lifespan, the OVA couldn't do anything with it. For example, you'd imagine that Nami would have a lot of sympathy and relate greatly to Madaka, until you realize Nami's story had yet to play out, so there was really no depth to any of the Straw Hats at the time, so they can't really do anything but show their surface level personalities. Being under 30 minutes, there's not much you can actually expect this to do. For being the first One Piece animated adaptation, it's definitely worth a watch just to, at the very least, experience it. About a year later in 1999, the OVA got a VHS release, and promotional copies were even bundled in with select issues of Shonen Jump. And a novelization tie-in was also made around this time as well. It doesn't change anything, but it does expand on a few plot points here and there. But the best thing of all is that this isn't the last we've seen of the pirate Ganzack.
コミック史上最高の人気作品ついに登場伝説の財宝をめぐり最強の敵に挑む海賊王に俺はなる未来の夢に向かって大冒険が今始まる映画新登場ワンピース
The first actual One Piece film really came out in the year 2000 with a movie simply titled One Piece the Movie. Now that the anime had actually been in production, the movie was produced in-house by Toei Animation. It released as a double feature alongside Digimon Adventure, our war game at Toei's 2000 Spring Anime Fair. This film marked the beginning of a long trend, which is probably the reason many people may not be too inclined to check out the movies, which is that they're not written by Oda. Not all of them at least, especially when it comes to these early films. Needless to say, Oda has rightfully earned the respect of his audience in handling his characters and delivering a story within his world. Hand the keys to the castle off to someone else, and who knows if they get the characterization right. If this even is a story that inherently fits into the world. That's enough to dissuade many people into feeling like these films are more akin to fan fiction, which they're not inherently wrong. Now, they're not all just getting churned out without his oversight or blessing. In fact, he almost always acknowledges them in some way. For example, in the March 27th, 2000 issue of Shonen Jump, he said it flowed really well and was a lot of fun being packed with playfulness right through to the credits. To be fair, this film wasn't written by some random nobody with no familiarity to the franchise. It was written by Michiru Shimada, who did a lot of scripts and storyboarding for the series, pretty much from the beginning and through Arabasta. So she's more than familiar with the characters, and I definitely think that it showed. The movie takes place in the transitional period between Syrup Village and the Baratie arc, meaning Usopp's now part of the crew. The plot of this movie revolves around a pirate of old named Woonin. It is said that during his time, he had plundered 1/3 of all of the gold in the world. Yep, I said it. 1/3. Not 1/3 of the East Blue or any small subsection. 1/3 of everything. Listen, I know I'm not supposed to be looking at this through the 2024 lens where the world is so unbelievably insanely massive. They're still in the East Blue. Sanji's not even part of the crew. But the idea of stealing 1/3 of all of the world's gold in a normal world is already insanely impressive. But in One Piece, that's more impressive than becoming king of the pirates. And Woonin, no devil fruit, no powers, in every way imaginable, he made out like a bandit. His bounty is 60 million, which is nothing to scoff at. It's easily the highest in all of the East Blue. Arlong's was 20 million, and after beating Luffy, Luffy's was 30 million. So 60 million for someone who resides in the East Blue is quite frankly legendary. And for the sake of the movie, it was. He left a map that allegedly pointed to the location where all of the gold was held, and now pirates search for this supposed island of gold. One such individual is a man named El Dorado, like the Lost City, just with a G. He's a man who is obsessed with gold and only gold. He doesn't really care about other gems like diamonds or things that have other monetary value. This man really only loves gold. Because of this, the legend obviously caught his interest, and so he and his men tracked down the pirates in possession of the map and took it for themselves. He does have devil fruit powers, the Goe Goe no Mi, or the voice fruit. He's able to use the sound of his voice to create energy beams that he can fire at targets. His crew only consists of a few individuals, most notably Golas. He's more of a mercenary than he is part of the crew, as every time he's given an order, he has to be paid. He doesn't really talk at all, so it's hard to say much about him. The only other member of the crew are known as the Hyena 3, Danny, Denny, and Donnie. Pretty much the original cowardly trio. They're confident when they think they have the upper hand, but when things go wrong, you just can't trust them. The movie opens up nearly the same way as the last one, with the Straw Hats on the brink of starvation as Luffy has eaten all of their provisions. While the crew scuffle as what to do, their problems get even worse when the Hyena 3 board the Going Merry and steal all of their treasure. They almost get away with it as they give everyone some rice balls in return, but when Luffy returns for seconds, they make the mistake of unloading one right into his head, and then 50 more into the rest of them. El Dorado arrives and unleashes the power of his devil fruit towards the Merry, destroying the burglar's boat and capsizing the ship. Nami and Usopp are swept away, while Zoro dove into the water to save Luffy, effectively splitting up the crew. The duo are not alone, however, as there's a boy named Tobio. He's a kid who really looked up to Woonin and wants to find him so he can join his crew. He was caught by El Dorado in the beginning of the film and forced to work under him, but obviously he wasn't of any value as they just abandoned him after this. Now stuck with Luffy and Zoro, the two are allured by the smell of a nearby Odin shop conveniently run by Tobio's grandfather, Gonzo. The two get chained up as they don't have any funds to pay for all the food that they ate, and this is how they spend a lot of the film. I will say that it was actually really cool to see what Zoro's capable of when his arms are bound and all he's got is the Wado Ichimonji. Realistically, it is a one-sword style he doesn't get to display often, probably because it does look quite ridiculous, but hey, he still managed to slice El Dorado's nails. Displaying swordsmanship like that with no hands at this point in the story shows he still means business, and you're lucky his arms aren't free. As for the others, throughout the movie, Usopp gets caught by El Dorado and spends his time doing what he does best, lying and pretending he knows where the treasure is to save his own skin. Nami doesn't really do anything in this film. She plays along with Usopp's lie until the two manage to slip away. The story is mainly one about Tobio and his grandfather Gonzo. Tobio pretty much despises the small and simple life that he lives, idealizing Woonin and the grand accomplishments that he's achieved. Tobio wants to prove his resolve himself to join Woonin's crew and so intends to find his treasure where he will likely be. After regrouping, Nami takes a look at Woonin's map herself, believing that she knows an old scorching trick he used to hide the treasure's location. Luckily, Usopp remembered a clue from the map that points them towards where the treasure could be found. So everyone, along with Tobio, make their way towards the treasure, but they're shocked to see Gonzo waiting. Turns out Gonzo and Woonin used to be childhood friends. Woonin always yearned for gold and glory, but Gonzo's dream was always much smaller, wanting to run an Odin shop. He didn't see much value in gold, equating it to nothing more than just a rock, which obviously upset Woonin. The two got into a scuffle which led to both of them tumbling over a cliff. Gonzo sacrificed himself for the sake of his friend, but obviously didn't die. Woonin didn't know that, and so set out on his goal to fulfill his dream for the sake of both of them, which obviously he accomplished. Both of them have. Gonzo now has his Odin shop and now wants to share a pot with an old friend. Everyone eventually manages to find Woonin's house, but are interrupted by Eldorado and his men. Zoro takes on Golas. What I love about Zoro's fight in this movie is just how much he embodies the characteristics of Mihawk. Relative to where this film takes place, Zoro has yet to meet him. Of course, the whole arc had already been written in the manga, so it's not like this film did it first, but like Mihawk, Zoro is able to recognize Golas's pride as a swordsman. But in this case, it's not what's making him strong, it's what's making him weak, as he's ashamed to be working for Eldorado as a simple treasure hunter. Because of this, Zoro bests him by avoiding his vital points and tells him to come find him again when he's regained his pride. Again, the Mihawk scene had already been written in the manga, but if you were exclusively watching the anime when it was initially airing, this movie did premiere 2 months before the episode aired on TV. This movie was pretty much in sync with the anime, so just as Syrup Village was ending and Usopp joined the crew, this movie immediately happened. Not just within the timeline, but with the animation scheduling. So some people got to see Zoro do this to Golas, and then watch Mihawk as he did the exact same thing to him, and saw the parallels of their characters in real time. Luffy's battle with Eldorado is a little bit less eventful. Luffy is somehow able to send one of his blasts back at him as if the beam he fired was a physical projectile able to be reflected. I don't know the logistics. Either way, the rest of the crew scatter like flies and the Straw Hats are able to uncover Woonin's treasure. Or should I say, the lack of it. Yeah, turns out Woonin did in fact steal 1/3 of all the world's treasure, but he returned it, coming to value the journey above all else. This is everything One Piece fans say that they don't want out of the series. It's comical. There's no treasure at the end of the road. It was all about the adventure they had along the way. Oda may not have written this film, but perhaps it was for the better that this plot point was used immediately to get it out of their system. So yeah, Woonin not only managed to steal 1/3 of all the world's gold, but he also managed to return it all to their rightful owners. Again, I say that that's more impressive than becoming king of the pirates. Woonin chose to spend his last month sealed away, but didn't regret his time as a pirate. Learning all this inspires Tobio to follow his own dream like both his grandfather and Woonin did. It's a simple movie, a little over 50 minutes, and definitely what you would expect for a franchise's first film. Its strongest suits are probably the characterization of the Straw Hats. Plenty of genuine laughs from them throughout it. On top of being One Piece's first movie, the antagonists of this film also managed to find their way into One Piece's first video game as well. Eldorado, Golas, and the Hyena 3 were all featured in Become Pirate King in their own little bonus level that loosely adapted the film. I can't say that I knew that even despite making a video about all of the games because 1, the game is only in Japanese, so navigating my way through it would have been incredibly difficult, but more importantly, the game is terrible. You're hard pressed to play that game for more than a couple minutes before turning it off. But surprisingly, it wasn't the only video game they appeared in. Eldorado has appeared in a handful of other games as well. He's playable in Grand Line Adventure Dreamlog for the Game Boy Color, but probably his most prominent appearance after this movie is a feature in the great hidden treasure of Nanatsu Island. Definitely a One Piece game worth checking out. Apparently, after his defeat at the end of the movie, he heard about the treasure on the island and made his way there. After learning the treasure wasn't gold, he lost interest. It's definitely more of a cameo appearance, but a welcome one at that. Speaking of the games, Woonin was just straight up recycled completely. He was given a beard and renamed Torokai and used as the main antagonist for the Set Sail Pirate Crew video game on the PS1. They didn't even try to change him. But while Eldorado has made multiple cameo appearances, arguably it is Golas who has made the most appearances post-film. For whatever reason, his bounty poster is constantly being shown. In episode 45, it's on the wall of Full Body's ship. It's in the Gold Roger bar in Logtown. You can see it in one of the houses in Whiskey Peak, and even Shaki has a poster of him in her bar. Arguably, he's the most canon character from this film. Who knows, maybe he will run into Zoro again one day for a rematch. No one said Zoro couldn't be somebody else's Mihawk.
映画最新作「ワンピースねじまき島の冒険」
Clockwork Island Adventure was One Piece's second venture into the realm of theatrical films. It released 1 year after the first on March 3rd, 2001. While a 1 year turnaround may seem crazy for a movie, what's even more crazy is that the first 10 films were released 1 year after the other. From 2000 to 2009, there was a new One Piece movie in theaters almost at the same time every year without fail. Clockwork Island Adventure takes place in the small gap of time after the events of Logtown, but before Reverse Mountain, so they haven't entered the Grand Line just yet. Similar to the previous film, this one also debuted at Toei's annual Spring Anime Fair. This one was written by Hiroshi Hashimoto, who, like Michiru from the last film, has done some writing for the series prior. The plot of this film kicks in when the Mary is stolen right out from underneath our characters' noses when they were relaxing on a beach. Obviously, they can't lose their ship, and so they need to track down the people responsible. A whole week passes before they're able to find some new clothes and a mean of transportation, which, in their case, was a bridal shop. It might be the closest Sanji ever comes to marrying Nami, but I gotta say, it's one of my favorite looks of his. Our characters get trapped by two brothers, Akisu and Borodo, who call themselves the Thief Brothers. They're looking to become the world's greatest thieves by stealing something known as the Diamond Clock. It's the crown jewel of Clockwork Island and the most valuable clock in the world. But we'll later learn that their encounter with the Straw Hats wasn't exactly coincidental. Borodo tells them that their ship was stolen by the Trump Pirates, the people currently in control of the island. The Trump Pirates are great. I love them as a crew. They are perfect antagonists for the Straw Hats. One thing about the movies is that when it comes to the antagonists, oftentimes you'll see that they lack a memorable crew. Most of the time it'll be a captain and maybe a lieutenant or two, but you pretty much forget all of the other ones who are not the big bad, if there even are others, which a lot of the time there aren't. But the Trump Pirates feel like they all belong together. You get the sense that they're a well-rounded crew, just like the Straw Hats. They're led by Bear King, a large and hairy man who wears the fur of a bear on parts of his clothing. While gruff on the outside, he does seem to go for a much cuter design on both his hat and Jolly Roger. He's not as intimidating as his wanted poster would make him out to seem. He's more akin to the likes of Buggy or Foxy, being more comedic and goofy than threatening. He possesses the Kachi Kachi no Mi Devil Fruit, which allows him to strengthen his body like a rock, as well as heat up parts of his body as well. It's actually more akin to the likes of armament hockey in the form of Devil Fruit. He gotta bypass all that training and got to have one of the strongest abilities a fighter can have, no joke. Then there are the other members. Honey Queen probably has the boldest on-screen debut, showing up completely naked without a care in the world. She's a Logia-type Devil Fruit user with the Toro Toro no Mi, which allows her to completely liquefy her body. Her clothes don't get liquefied, so anytime she uses her power, she winds up completely nude. Not that it seems to bother her. She is as confident as confidence can be. But I mean, so would everyone if they look like this. She's probably the only devil fruit user we'll ever see who, when submerged in water, doesn't show any signs of being weakened. Everyone knows that when a devil fruit user is submerged, they become helpless and can't move. Usually it's about half of their body before it just completely gives up, but Honey Queen, she's thriving. I know, it's early One Piece, so the rule may not have been fully established that any form of standing water weakens them, but I like to imagine that it's because of her devil fruit it's a somewhat symbiotic relationship. Bojack is the pig-looking guy. He and Honey Queen seem to be more of a duo together, often being deployed at the same time. Despite what he may appear, he doesn't actually have a devil fruit. It's just a lot of spiked-themed weapons and armor in his arsenal. A lot of the members of the Trump Pirates have a gimmick associated to them. Bojack, for example, is that of a quiz show host. Boo is apparently a standard Japanese sound effect for a wrong buzzer sound, so he does that a lot. Pin Joker is the swordsman. He's got the look of a jester, and judging a book by its cover, you would expect that he's far from an honorable fighter. His gimmick is that he's often spouting old Chinese proverbs, but never quite getting them correct. He's voiced by Hideyuki Tanaka, the same voice actor for Doflamingo, who is also known as Joker. It's funny how the same one man voiced two characters in the same series with the name Joker. Skunk One is the Usopp of their group. It's the best way I can describe him. He's not a sharpshooter, but he's the weird looking one who uses a lot of gadgets as his form of combat. His jetpack just makes it look like he's farting everywhere. Fitting for his name. The Trump Pirates are just so memorable, and I think part of that reason has to do with how synergetic they reflect our main characters. This is one of, if not the first time, each Straw Hat had a counterpart. It reminded me a lot of Arabasta in Water 7, where it was so clear which person had to deal with each opponent, and this is one of the earliest instances which just makes them feel so much more inherently memorable. Now, the Trump Pirates may be the villains of this movie who took over Clockwork Island, but if I'm being honest, Clockwork Island kind of deserves to be taken over. The island's gimmick is that it was filled with brilliant engineers and craftsmen who were renowned for their gadget-like creations, music boxes, clocks, and other finer, intricate devices. It was clear that people knew what they were doing. And yet somehow, some genius who was too obsessed with gears and mechanisms engineered a ginormous key to the island which, if ever exposed to air, would activate and destroy the whole place. They were asking for someone to come along and enslave their people. It's not Bear King's fault that he took over the place. He didn't invent this doomsday device. So it's kinda hard to feel sympathetic for these people. Anyway, the plot of the movie kicks in when Nami gets kidnapped and taken so she can marry Bear King. Strangely, not the last time Nami would get taken in hopes of forcibly becoming someone else's bride. Nami is pretty much the catalyst for everything that's happening in the movie, not only getting kidnapped, but by rejecting Bear King's proposal, he vows to show her his strength by defeating Luffy and the others and using their bounty to fund their wedding. Nami has it pretty chill this film. She's not tied up, she's not being tortured, she's sitting around playing strip poker with everyone. Like, this is what I mean when I say the Trump Pirates just have a realness about them. They're not villains 24/7. It's a shame, because I think both crews would have gotten along well if under different circumstances. From here, the movie's pretty straightforward. Everyone, including Akisu and Boruto, all make their way to Clockwork Island, and the characters almost immediately beeline it for the castle. Due to the structure of the movie, the Straw Hats are almost all taken out one by one. Sanji gets put through the ringer. Despite starting the film at a high point for him undoing Nami's top and rubbing sunscreen on her back, something that he would never get the opportunity to do in modern day with all of the other crew members, he goes through absolute hell. His feet get splintered, he kicks a spiked ball that goes straight through his foot, he falls face first from a hot air balloon in the sky straight onto the ground and into a bomb. Like, damn, give him a break. Usopp is the next one to go after Skunk One enters the fray and paralyzes everyone with his gas. Usopp sacrifices himself by covering up his gas nozzle with his mouth. Yeah, Usopp gets a rough end of the deal as well. But it allows everyone to make it into the castle. Further in, Luffy and Zoro get trapped between two walls and we learn all about the true motivation behind Bororo's actions. Turns out he was never actually interested in stealing the diamond clock. What he wanted was to liberate the island from the Trump pirates. He and Akisu aren't blood brothers, and he suspects that he came from the island, but it was run by pirates. He lured Luffy and the others here as he was the one who stole their boat in the beginning, and he was hoping that he would be able to defeat the Trump pirates. But now, since everyone has become trapped, he heads off to do it alone. Zoro gets captured after using his body to protect the Luffy from Joker. It's kinda dark seeing all the Straw Hats crucified like this and ready to be executed. Bear King intends on using the King Cannon, the Trump Pirate's ultimate weapon meant to help him become King of the Pirates. Early One Piece really did seem to suffer from this lack of the expanded horizon. Taking everything into account, this is now the third villain that they've had use a cannon as their trump card. No pun intended. And who brings it out? Well, none other than Danny, and Donnie. Yeah, the Hyena 3 are back and have joined the Trump Pirates after the defeat of El Dorado in the first film. They don't stick around for too long once they spot Luffy. Unfortunately, this would be the last time that we see them as they haven't made an appearance in any material since. As you would expect, Luffy frees everyone and they would go on to fight their respective person. Honestly, none of these fights are particularly great. Nami with Honey Queen isn't even a fight as she just locks her in a jar when she's trying to flee. Bear King does show some resilience as he almost tanks a bullet from his own King Cannon Luffy sends back at him. Ultimately, he is defeated by this and the island's doomsday mechanism is activated, which causes the whole of Clockwork Island to be destroyed. Akisu is reunited with his parents because that was the plot driving the story forward, and everyone parts ways with a happy ending. Of the early One Piece films, Clockwork Island was the most successful financially, grossing over 3 billion yen, a record that wouldn't be broken by the other films for almost a decade. It both is and isn't shocking if you ask me. The overarching story about Akisu and Bororo is the least interesting part of the movie, despite being the plot. But for a 50-minute runtime, it pretty much is predominantly action from beginning to end. There's only a handful of moments where things feel like they slowed down, but even then, it's not that much for too long. That and the Trump Pirates kinda carry it. They may not be the most deep antagonists, but I think they were a good crew for where our characters were in the story. Just like the last film, the Trump Pirates would get a few cameo appearances here and there. The most notable is yet again in the Great Hidden Treasure of Nanatsu Island. Bear King's search for a bride continued following his defeat and he set out to sea alone. You run into Honey Queen who's searching for her brother and asks the Straw Hats to help her out. While they're wary at first, they agree to help. Turns out he wound up at the island's village where he ran into Alvida and obviously wanted her to be his wife. But when he touched her, he slipped off and hit his head on a rock. He's been in the hospital recovering since. You run into Honey Queen again, who didn't stop looking, frozen at the top of an icy mountain. She's inexperienced in cold climates and due to her devil fruit, she wound up getting frozen solid. But our characters were fortunate enough to find her and thaw her out. They tell her where Bear King is and the two thank everyone and depart the island. This is the type of return that I love to see from past antagonists. No grudges really held, everyone's cool now, I love it. Clockwork Island, definitely a movie worth checking out. Give it a watch.
映画最新作「ワンピース珍獣島のチョッパー王国」
Chopper's Kingdom on the Island of Strange Animals was the third film to be released on March 2nd, 2002. This is probably the first real stinker. Everyone loves Chopper, he's adorable and cute and funny, and any excuse we can get to have him be a focus is great, especially since he doesn't often get the spotlight. He's the most recent addition to the Straw Hats at the time, but the movie takes place in an interesting spot. Neither Vivi nor Robin are present in the crew, which just wasn't a time. Vivi has been with everyone since Whiskey Peak, and Robin joins immediately after Arabasta. So this movie kinda wedges itself in right after Drum Island, but excludes Vivi. Anyway, the reason I say it's not great is because despite its name, Chopper's Kingdom on the Island of Strange Animals isn't really about Chopper. Nami had found a treasure map that led them to Crown Island, but when they were on their way, they were hit by a knock-up stream which flung Chopper from the ship, separating him from everyone else. He winds up landing in the middle of the island's inhabitants as they were performing a ceremony to find a new king. Mistaking his appearance as fate, Chopper is crowned King of the Animals. Crown Island itself is fairly interesting since it was the first time we ever got introduced to a race of animals that was able to just freely speak the language of humans. Maybe a little bit too soon, considering Chopper's whole story was how he was discriminated because he was the only animal that could talk. Traditionally, they just spoke how they normally would, and Chopper would be able to translate since he understands all animals. We would later be introduced to the Mink tribe much later down the road, which are a race able to speak human language, but these are not them. There's no real explanation as to what they are. I think it's just kind of a given that we were bound to run into an island where the animals could talk, but since it's placing itself right after Drum Island, I don't know about that. The main character here is a kid named Mobambi. He's the only human on the island. His father was killed by a pirate and he washed ashore and was taken in by the previous animal king, Kid and Lion, and raised to be his own. He holds tremendous amounts of respect for him and as a result is eager to find his successor, which he believes is now Chopper. He spends pretty much the entire film trying to convince Chopper that pirates are bad and this is where he belongs. And Chopper, he doesn't really do anything. He's listening to Mobambi's constant pleas, trying to convince him, but it's never as if Chopper even humors the idea of leaving the Straw Hats. He heals the people because that's what he does, but it's more as if he's in a situation where he's too kind to just say no. The villain of the film is Earl Battler. He's a poacher looking to obtain the crowning treasure of the island, a mysterious power hidden within the horns of a special animal. Whoever eats it will become powerful, or something. Sanji also says it can make a stamina drug as well. This treasure is a bit whack. It's more valuable than any gold or gems. Of course it is. At first it was a clock, now it's animal horns. These movies have got to stop saying that these random knickknacks are the most valuable thing in the world. Battler is obviously looking to eat them, so he's going around the island, cutting off animals' horns, hoping that they're the one. He's managed to accomplish so much here because he's controlling a group of animals called Horn Eaters with a violin he created. He's one of those villains where you wish Brook was part of the crew at the time, because if playing the violin is his method of power, you know Brook would have schooled this guy. He's accompanied by Hot Dog and Hebe, a martial artist and swordsman respectively. You could see where this is going. Hot Dog claims to be the strongest man alive, while Hebe claims to be the most handsome. There's really not much else to their characters. They're not serious villains, they're all pretty stupid, as even Usopp's able to take advantage of them. Eventually, the Straw Hats manage to regroup, but Mobambi is not happy due to his hatred of pirates. But when Battler reappears and threatens to summon the Horn Eaters, Chopper is forced to step up as the Animal King and use himself as a decoy to protect the island's inhabitants. The rest of our characters have to track him down and deal with the others. Something I will give this film credit for is breaking the formula as to Zoro and Sanji's opponents. Typically, Zoro will face the swordsman while Sanji the martial artist, of course. But in this, they face the reverse. Zoro goes against Hot Dog while Sanji faces Hebe. And I think this actually makes a ton of sense, and I'm shocked that they haven't done it in the main canon to my recollection. Considering just how often Zoro and Sanji are clashing against each other, it would inherently give them practice against the other's fighting style. And I like that that's acknowledged here. Of course they win their respective fights, Sanji saying Hebe's blade is crap, and Zoro saying Hot Dog's kicks are weak.
てめえの剣なんぞあいつに比べりゃクソみてえなもんだぜ
世の中にはねてめえなんかよりもっとすごい蹴りをする男がいるんだぜムカつく野郎だけどな
I like how this movie was able to have these two put respect on each other's name while not diminishing their rivalry. Mobambi, wanting to save Chopper's life, lures Battler with the horns of Kid and Lion, the true crowning treasure of the island. His diversion doesn't last long as he's able to eat the horns and transform into a giant beast. Chopper is able to put up a decent fight, but as you'd expect, Luffy's ultimately the one who defeats him. Mobambi is literally recognized by the island as the new Animal King, and he and Chopper depart as friends. Due to being an early iteration of his character, Chopper is shown to be a lot less cute and a bit more brave. Not that that's a problem, and it's not as if he skews too far away from his normal self. It was just enough to recognize that he was a lot more brave than how we've come to know him. The character designs were also taken from various sources. Luffy, Zoro, and Usopp are all in their outfits from the very first color walk, while Nami is in her Chapter 111 color spread design, and Sanji is in his Volume 11 cover. But by the end of the movie, everyone is in their Color Walk 1 outfits. Unfortunately, not a great movie. You're not missing out on much.
全速力で行くぞー！じゃ、行くか。
Dead End Adventure is the first One Piece film post-Arabasta. Robin is now part of the crew. The Straw Hats are in need of some cash, and so Nami prods the bartender as she smells some money. He leads everyone through a secret passageway to the site of the Dead End Race, an anything-goes competition organized by pirates for pirates. The way it works is that the goal is different every time, but everyone is given an eternal pose to race to the finish line. Robin explains all of this because she's been here before. I was shocked to see how well this held up. We know Robin spent her life bouncing from pirate crew to pirate crew until she inevitably landed on Crocodile, but it's not often that they do anything with this time in between, where she literally could have done anything. Sometimes they don't always get their footing with the characterization of new members so soon after they joined, but I like this very simple use of this aspect of her character. I guess it does actually conflict with how she's characterized now, because now she's almost always reading books or ruins. It's almost as if they forget that she has lived a life full of experiences before. But anyway, they run into a ton of different competitors, some giants, a fishman that was apparently a rival of Arlong, but the reigning champion and the favorite to win is Gaspard. He's a former Marine who defected after killing his entire crew to become a pirate. He hopes to one day rule the sea that he hates so much. He stole his ship and garnered a reputation as the Marine's greatest stain. In hindsight, with 2024 One Piece, that is nothing. That's slap on the wrist territory. But for 2003 One Piece, this is actually a big reputation to have had. They also meet a bounty hunter by the name of Shiraya Baskud, but we'll get to him here soon. The race itself is actually not really the main point of the movie. In fact, Luffy and the others actually have a pretty fun time competing and going against the other pirates. The problem comes in when they reach the finish line. It turns out to have been Navarone, a marine stronghold which hilariously is also the location of the G8 arc. It was all a trick. Gaspard had given everyone a false eternal pose, thus rigging the entire competition in his favor. But you see, the movie isn't even really about the Straw Hats. Realistically, Shiraya is the main character. When he was 12, the Gaspard pirates attacked his hometown of Elena. The whole shipyard was destroyed and less than 100 people survived. Shiraya and his sister were attacked by Gaspard's first mate Needless, but his sister was knocked into a canal. Since then, he has dedicated his entire life to revenge by hunting down and killing Gaspard and all of his men. He goes against Needless and is able to defeat him, but unfortunately is too battle damaged to put up a fight against Gaspard himself. That is, until Luffy shows up. This is one of those situations where Luffy is on some straight up smoke. He doesn't care about the competition. He doesn't want a reward. He's just here to beat his ass. The situation is made difficult, however, because he too is a devil fruit user, a Logia, which makes things even harder. He possesses the Ame Ame no Mi, which allows him to create and control candy syrup. If they want to retcon Gaspard into being one of Big Mom's kids, I think they could. He'd fit right in. But as a result of being food related, it's thanks to Sanji that he's able to get the edge. By coating himself in flour, he's able to keep his candy state hardened to be able to be hit and launched into a cyclone. I think Luffy just straight up murdered him, so add that to the body count. Shiraya's story does have a happy ending, however. His sister didn't die the day Elena was attacked. She fell into the canal but was saved by an old man named Biera. He took her to go get medical attention but wound up on Gaspard's ship, and the two became forced to work under him. She lost all of her memories but stayed close to Biera. When he fell sick in modern day, Gaspard had told her that he would only help the old man if she killed a pirate. And that led her to running into the Straw Hats. But after Gaspard's defeat, she was reunited with her brother, and he dropped his life of vengeance and promised to start a new one for the both of them. Dead End Adventure is a good watch. It keeps it simple in what it's trying to do and doesn't fall flat on its face doing it. It's a fun time and I think worth checking out.
One Piece the movie レッドエンドの冒険
One Piece The Cursed Holy Sword is one of the more unique One Piece films to have been made, and not for the better. It's not that the movie inherently tries to do something different, but the story it winds up telling is a bit out there. And for One Piece, that's a bold statement to make. As you likely could have guessed, this movie is about a cursed holy sword, otherwise known as the Shichi Saiken, or the 7-star sword. It was created by the gods of the 7 stars of Asuka for the king of Asuka Island, a land that aptly worships this god. The blade was meant to protect its people, but when 3 princes became smitten by a priestess, they brought forth the sword as a symbol of the royal family in hopes to gift it to her. But which prince it would be was undetermined. So they all fought for it. A war between brothers spread to its land and people, and soon everything was soaked in the blood and hatred of so many that the blade became a cursed sword and the kingdom fell. In an effort to end the war and save the people from the bloodshed, the priestess sacrificed herself, and it worked. The 3 princes stopped their fighting and vowed to atone for their sins. Asuka once again gifted them, this time 3 orbs, which would seal the power of the blade. But once every 100 years on the night of a red moon, the sword is able to gather enough strength to reawaken and spread its power again. Whatever that means for a sword. So that's the setup. It's a bit out there to say the least, but you can kinda see where they were going. The concept of a cursed sword was introduced during Logtown, and I can see the writer maybe thinking that they were doing something like that and giving a backstory on how a cursed sword may have originated. I don't know if that's what they were doing, especially since they jumped the shark and said it was the most powerful cursed blade in existence, but it's not as if this is the first time they're touching upon the concept. But as we'll later see, this movie really commits to this literal god and practically magic. The movie opens up with one of the most graphic sequences in the entirety of One Piece. It opens with a flashback on a more modern time Asuka Island. It's being attacked by pirates who have come to claim the sword. Somehow it has gained this reputation of being the most beautiful and valuable sword in all of the Grand Line, so as you would expect, it draws unwanted attention. The pirates' raid is all-out chaos as we follow the perspective of a man named Saga, who is mortally wounded as he and a woman named Maya were pushed back and cornered. Out of desperation to save her, the cursed sword called to him and he grabbed it, falling under its influence. I didn't mention this, but if you come into contact with the sword, you become a slave to its will, so it's also more so mind-controlling. Saga's healed and just starts cleaving people in half. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. These people are just getting straight up murdered. And thus, we have our villain for the film. But wouldn't you know it, the Straw Hats have coincidentally docked at the island to restock on supplies. Nami tells everyone all about the rumors of the 7-star sword due to its reputation and value, and even Robin knows a bit of history surrounding its past. But it's with Zoro that the story unfolds. Yep, as you might have been able to pick up, a story about a cursed sword would naturally fall into the wheelhouse of our swordsman. This is a movie where he is the main character. As is natural, Zoro was left on the ship to guard it while everyone else was in town. A knife is thrown at him with his name engraved on it, which causes him to venture off alone, and not get lost. He runs into 3 mysterious individuals, Bismarck, Bukong, and Toma, who lead him to their dojo where Saga resides, and in a complete turn of events, Saga and Zoro know each other. Saga was apparently one of the children training in the Ishin dojo when they were kids. In fact, they were friends. Zoro obviously striving to become the world's greatest swordsman, while Saga wanted to master the Sword of Justice. Their friendship even apparently lasted as they grew up, having faced a few pirates together. The dagger he had thrown at him earlier in the movie was a symbol of their friendship and promises. But during one encounter in the past, Saga had gotten his arm trapped in between some chains, and Zoro couldn't cut steel at the time, so he was forced to leave him. Since that day, he believed him to be dead. That is, until he saw the knife. Saga washed up on Asuka Island, where he was taken in by the island's residents. He was welcomed into the village and met Maya, where the two fell in love and became engaged. This was the precursor to the island getting raided and him grabbing the cursed sword. The reason that he summoned Zoro is that he wants him to give up being a pirate. He needs a favor and so asks him to lend him his strength. And Zoro hears him out. This is quite frankly a characterization of Zoro that has not aged well. Zoro is not only considered to be the most loyal amongst the Straw Hats, Zoro is the most loyal. Oda actually said himself that if Luffy ordered it, Zoro would kill a member of the Straw Hats. But of course, Luffy would never do that, and Zoro knows that Luffy would never make that order. But that's the level of loyalty that we're talking about. And the idea of Zoro humoring the idea of betraying the crew because someone he knew from when he was younger reappeared just doesn't hold up coming back to it. Unless it was Kuina, but this is not her. The Straw Hats, as you would expect, are involved in the other half of the story with the island's residents. With Zoro missing, they obviously can't leave him behind, and so try to find him where they spot Maya taking a swim. Understandably, pirates appearing on the island is cause for concern, so she flees back to the village to alert everyone. While they try to make clear that they have no ill intentions, the situation is made worse when they are also attacked by Saga's people and Zoro. I gotta say, it's not fun to see Zoro so clearly betraying everyone and not acknowledge their existence. Like, I don't think he's ever been this type of edgy, let alone post-Arabasta. So the fun factor of this film is dampened quite a bit. It's also probably the only time we're given a definitive outcome on him fighting Sanji. Zoro just straight up beats him. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's hardly even a fight. I didn't mention this, but Luffy and Usopp broke away from everyone earlier, so they're on their own little adventure being lost. And so, with Sanji bested, he does what he came to do. He steals the orbs from Maya. That is what Saga wanted him to do. Because the orbs originally sealed the power of the 7-star sword, Saga, having been cursed, was unable to touch them. Without the orbs, the sealing ritual that needs to be performed every 100 years cannot be done, so during the Night of the Red Moon, the sword's dark power can gather enough strength and spread again. And what do they do with these very important orbs now that they've obtained them? They drop them down a well. You know, I guess they really do only need them to be gone for like a day, so I guess conceptually it checks out. But it doesn't work because Luffy and Usopp stumble their way through a cave system and find them accidentally, and thus the ritual can be performed. As for Zoro, his story kinda just reverses. Toma tells him that the 7-star sword needs a powerful opponent as its first sacrifice upon being reawakened, and Zoro is to be that sacrifice. But Zoro gave his life to Luffy, so he can't let that happen. He was only up for a little betrayal, apparently. With the orbs obtained, the Straw Hats all split up to bring them to their respective altars, which Luffy also accidentally stumbled upon while being lost in the caves. They fight off Saga's forces while Maya performs the ritual. Zoro faces off against Saga, kind of. Zoro doesn't like seeing him brainwash people, and so now seeks to free him from the blade's influence, but he winds up being beaten for the most part. For some reason, the film still gives Luffy the final battle. He does most of the heavy lifting while Zoro comes back right at the final moment to deliver the finishing blow. The ritual is finished, and Saga and all of those enslaved by the blade's curse are freed. All in all, not a great movie. Zoro being the main focus is a bit rough, especially since he doesn't wear his heart on his sleeve. He's already not the most talkative person, so getting a read on his motivation and trying to understand why he's doing what he's doing is pretty hard here. I definitely don't think it's impossible to have a Zoro-centric story, but that paired with this literal god and magical ritual storyline makes for a not great film.
呪われた聖剣
Baron Omatsuri and the Secret Island is probably the single most renowned One Piece film. If there is a single movie you should watch out of all of these and go in completely blind, let it be this one. If you haven't seen it, click off of this video and go watch it, or at least skip this one and just go to the next film, because you deserve to watch this movie blind. What happens when you mix One Piece with horror? Horror is already underrepresented when it comes to media in general, but in One Piece, it's a genre that's never really been tackled. Thriller Bark's probably the closest it's come, but that was mostly aesthetic. It's not as if that arc was truly trying to shake its audience nor the characters to their core in a mental or psychological way. As a result, this film fills in a niche that even the main franchise can't provide. Add on to that it's actually a great movie, and what you have is an incredibly memorable One Piece product. It was written by Masahiro Ito, and no, not the one who worked on Silent Hill. I mean, what are the odds that someone who's so synonymous with the horror genre sharing the same name as another person on what is effectively a One Piece horror film? It's such a crazy coincidence that I just have to clear that they're not the same person. The movie opens up in a very simple and straightforward way. The crew finds a message in a bottle inviting them to Omatsuri Island, a resort with spas, salons, women, drinks, food, a place for the pirates among pirates. It sounds like a paradise, and it's for that exact reason that they think it's a trap. With the crew split on whether or not to go, Luffy decides they're going because, what other reason then? They're pirates. I love how the animation looks upon their arrival. Just how bleak and muted all of the colors are. It gives you such an uneasy feeling from the get-go. But just a little further in, they're shocked to find exactly what they were looking for. A complete resort with all sorts of fancy attractions, rides, people, women, drinks. They're greeted by the island's owner, Baron Omatsuri. He welcomes everyone, but also says that they should prove their worth by taking part in a competition called the Trial of Hell, which Luffy agrees to. When I was watching this for the first time, I was like, oh my god, not another Davy back fight. I don't have a problem with that arc, but there is no way we're getting a whole movie that's just another rigged series of competitions. First is the goldfish catching competition, which Usopp pompously steps up to do, but is shocked to learn that the fish they're catching is actually a sea king. Fortunately, everyone can participate, which they do. That was the most annoying thing about Foxy, were all the rules he implemented that made things unfair. There are still rules here, like no killing the fish, but overall, it's not as egregious. But the Straw Hats come out on top. This is another great sense of foreshadowing afterwards. Chopper accidentally falls into the sea and Luffy jumps in to save him, so Sanji obviously has to go in to save them both. But on the way up, Luffy sees a whole fleet of sunken ships, but doesn't think anything about them. But anyway, the Baron demands that they compete in another game, which Luffy yet again agrees to. This time, it's a game of ring toss. 2 teams of 4 people must throw rings over the opposing enemies, all while on speedboats. Due to the threat of water, they have Zoro, Sanji, Usopp, and Nami compete. The competition itself is largely uneventful, as Luffy, Robin, and Chopper all venture off alone. Robin is digging for information regarding her curiosity about the island's mysterious nature. The lack of guests is mysterious, but most curiously, what catches her interest is the flower that the Baron walks around with. It's said that it only grows on this island. Luffy runs into a mysterious mustached man named Brief. He asks that Luffy join his crew, which he obviously refuses, but he then gives him an ominous warning saying that they should beware of the Baron as he separates people. Meanwhile, Chopper's adventure leads him nowhere. It's a liminal space where everything is empty. There's no people, there's no signs of life, there's literally nothing, and it leaves you feeling uneasy. And that leads Chopper to a massive gravesite. If things weren't feeling wrong before, they definitely are now. he runs into a man referred to as Papa. He too was a pirate who came to the island for the resort, but after losing the fishing competition, he ran away with his 3 kids. He asks that Chopper allow him to pretend beating him up so he can look strong in front of his kids, and in turn, he'll tell him about the Baron, which he does. He reveals that the Baron and his crew are all actually pirates. They've been luring other pirates to the island with the purpose of finding the strongest amongst them. He shows Chopper an old wanted poster of the crew, with Chopper noticing how young the Baron looks compared to everyone else. But you see, the Baron is also there. The Straw Hats win the ring toss game, and the Baron treats them all to a dinner party. And things just continue to get more ominous. There's some friction amongst the crew after the game, so Usopp storms off where he meets DJ Gappa. He likes Usopp's hat and demands that he give it to him, but he refuses, which angers him. I mean, just look at his eyes. He's the creepiest looking member of the crew. Like, there's no emotion behind his eyes. He looks like a living puppet. Meanwhile, Robin ventured off in search of this rare flower, only to be met by the Baron, who unveils the truth of it. He tells her its hidden secret, that it's a flower of reincarnation. Robin is shocked to see this gigantic thing is actually the flower, but he can't tell anyone because she's also shot. Back at the party, Muchigoro is telling Nami all about how great their crew is and how they could have probably taken on Roger, whom they met not too long ago. This obviously confuses Nami as he's been dead for over 20 years, but Muchi is sure of it. It was just before a terrible storm. But dredging up these memories stirs up something within him, especially remembering the Lily Carnation. By this point, the rest of the Straw Hats have picked up that something is not right. Robin, Chopper, and Usopp have all gone missing, and they don't have time for more games. Zoro and Sanji run off to find everyone alone, not after taking Usopp's hat back, while the Baron announces the next challenge, which is the most dangerous, a hunting game. There are no rules. The crew is to be mercilessly hunted down. And one by one, Sanji, Nami, and Zoro are all taken. And I don't think I can do justice to this final act. As you might have guessed by now, the Baron's entire crew died over 20 years ago in a terrible storm. He was devastated by their loss and has come to hate happy and close bonded crews. The Lily Carnation has allowed him to revive his dead crewmates by consuming the lives of other pirates. And all of the Straw Hats, they die. I don't know what to tell you. They are consumed and turned into this gross monstrosity. Like, it is the most brutal defeat and breaking of the Straw Hats, I would say, even to this day. Like, Sabaody was devastating and hadn't happened at this point. But this is true, utter despair. The lack of a will to live. Not wanting to go on. Luffy tries to fight, he's a little bit despaired, comes back again, but loses again. This is like top 3 Luffy being broken moments. He may as well have been killed. Look at him. He doesn't even save the day. He's helped by Brief and Papa, who are the ones to literally kill the Lily. The only reason the Straw Hats don't die is because, I don't know, their wills were still alive or something. They were literally consumed. If we're being honest, every Straw Hat died in this movie. But of course, that doesn't happen. Without the Lily, the Baron's body cannot live, so he can join the rest of his crew in the afterlife. And all of the Straw Hats remain an ironclad, trustworthy crew. Goodness gracious. Baron Omatsuri and the Secret Island is the best One Piece film. You have to watch it yourself, even if I just spoiled everything for you. The execution of it is much better than mine. The Baron and the Lily were such a menace to society. It's such a one-of-a-kind One Piece product. You don't get this anywhere else. It was pre-Sabaody, it was pre-Water 7, so they don't even have any upgraded abilities or anything, and that definitely adds on to it now. Cause it's not as if they could outrun these arrows, or even defend against it with hockey or anything. But I think even against our modern characters, he would still be a menace. I'm not even recommending this film, I'm telling you, if you're a One Piece fan, watch it.
One Piece the movie! Omatsuri Ganzack to Himitsu no Shima
The giant mechanical soldier of Karakuri Island. Not that Karakuri. This is what I would describe as a quintessential filler arc turned movie. Personally, I feel like I do a pretty decent job at giving these films a fair shake and being interested in what they try to do. In fact, with the exception of a slight few, I think most of the films are actually pretty good and I can justify their existence. But this one, it's strange. Because it's not even that it's a bad movie, it just lacks purpose. When searching for a wrecked pirate ship for some treasure, they wind up mysteriously uncovering an old woman who was trying to bear the storm. While they consider throwing her back into the ocean, she saves her own skin by telling them about a legendary treasure from the island that she's from. But they can't get there via a log pose. They must use a turtle pose. And thus we arrive at Mecha Island. Her son Ratchet is the leader of the island and an inventor. As a result, he's made all kinds of mechanical doodads to serve a variety of purposes. We only get introduced to a few people. Honky is Ratchet's bodyguard, while Maji is his war general. Ganzack is a butler who serves Ratchet, but he's known the old lady for a long time and is actually loyal to her. There's a ton of made automatons Ratchet has made, but they're not exactly characters. Roba tells the Straw Hats about an old folk song the residents sing that is the supposed key to uncovering the Golden Crown, the treasure of Mecha Island. After deciphering the first part of the song, Ratchet, who's been having troubles figuring it out himself, decides to use them. And this is the problem with this movie: the antagonists. I mentioned this during Clockwork Island, but it remains true. The movie and the characters can only be good as the villain they're against, and these are terrible villains. Firstly, Honky and Maji have no presence whatsoever. I could probably count on one hand the amount of times both of them speak combined, which leaves everything to fall onto Ratchet, and despite his genius in inventing, he is an idiot. A lot of the movie is spent deciphering the song, which is largely unnoteworthy. They come to a giant lake that needs to be drained, and Ratchet believes they must drink all of the water. This is the level of unironic stupidity that we're dealing with. So Robin is busy trying to uncover more history about the island, while Chopper has been hearing a strange voice. Nami winds up successfully fulfilling the steps detailed in the song, and it is revealed that the entire island is actually a giant turtle. Ratchet has known this the entire time, but didn't know the steps to awaken it. So he used the Straw Hats to awaken the turtle so he can, are you ready for this? Take over the world. Even our characters, in the face of his master plan, are like, are you stupid? What's a turtle gonna do? Have you thought this out? They have to check to make sure that they're even against each other now. But anyway, he uses his inventions to wrap an entire cage around the turtle so he can manipulate it. I will say, I do like Robin's reaction to being caught in a trap. That is quite frankly the perfect Robin reaction to a bad situation. But Ratchet's castle is also a mecha, but to hammer home how terrible he is, you know how easily Luffy is impressed by everything he sees. Not even his mecha is able to impress Luffy. But I will say, one of the rare cool things this movie does is give an origin to Luffy's second gear. While he's being crushed, his legs accidentally buckled and he inadvertently entered second gear for the first time ever. I think that is neat to see, and more of an origin as to how he would have gotten the idea in the first place instead of just seemingly to pull it out of nowhere during Water 7. So I will give this movie props for that. But anyway, as you'd expect, Ratchet is defeated. Everyone is able to free the turtle from crashing into a nearby island, and it lays some eggs. Apparently, every 1,000 years, the turtle is supposed to be awoken so it can lay eggs. And it turns out that the hatched shell of the eggs are really what the Golden Crown was referring to, as they are made from gold for some reason. And to show just how much of a threat Ratchet really is, he is spanked by his mom at the end as a punishment. Like, come on, who's a worse villain than this guy? This is a different level of pathetic. The only other point of note that I written down for this film was the boob physics in this were very prominent. The animators did not hold back. But like I said, it's not that it's even a bad movie, but it's pure filler arc content.
One Piece the movie.
カラクリ城のメカ巨兵
Movie 8 was the beginning of a new trend. The episode of specials serve as recaps for their respective arcs. While One Piece wasn't nearly as long then as it is now, one of the biggest criticisms towards it are both the length of the series and the animation quality of the earlier arcs being a bit dated. Agree with it or not, this is what people were saying. And so the episode of specials were meant to condense these earlier arcs into a movie-length runtime while simultaneously updating the animation. There are plenty of episode of specials that have been made since its conception, but being the first two to have been created, episode of Arabasta and episode of Chopper got theatrical releases, placing them in the movie category as a technicality instead of the One Piece specials, despite there being no difference in what they do. And as a result, I'm splitting them up as well. And yep, this is just Arabasta. The problem with these episode of specials is that they're just not the way you should consume this series. This 90-minute runtime covers 38 episodes worth of material, so as you'd expect, a lot of stuff gets cut out. The pacing is off, there's no proper build up to the story or events taking place. The only people who should realistically be watching these are fans who have already read or watched the arcs and are just looking to re-experience it, maybe in a different and shorter way. There are changes, but none that drastically affect anything. Ace, Smoker, and the Marines have been completely removed. Sanji's present when Mr. 2 is showing off, but just doesn't let him touch his face. Some of Robin's backstory was shown now that fans knew it. Things like that are present or altered, none of which necessarily better the experience. One of the most valuable things Oda has when it comes to telling a story is time. He understands that the way he writes, he needs time to set things up and make the world feel natural and lived in. Get rid of that, and you're left with a rushed story. It's a bit unfair to place this into the category of the movies, but it was the first episode of, so it makes sense as to why it got a theatrical release. If you want to revisit Arabasta, it's okay. I will leave you off on one scene that they did add, which I noticed, which is Nami just getting handfuls of Miss Doublefinger when she's untying her. That wasn't in the original. I had a full-on mouth agape moment. Miss Doublefinger is a top 3 One Piece girl for me, and I definitely would have remembered that scene when I was younger. And I went back to check, and yep, they specifically added this. It's one of the horniest things I've seen out of the franchise, and if I see this is the most replayed part of the video, I think that's gonna say a lot more about you as viewers than it does about me.
One Piece Episode of Arabasta 砂漠の王女と海賊たち
While I did say the episode of specials are predominantly recaps, which they pretty much are, they aren't all as cut and dry. Episode of Chopper is the first time they delved into a what-if storyline. It's a remake of the Drum Island arc, but with Frankie and Robin part of the crew. It's a reimagining if they got all the way through Enies Lobby without recruiting Chopper. So, with this interesting change on an older arc with new characters, how different is it? Not much. In fact, it's almost kind of exactly the same. Despite adding Robin and Frankie, they don't do anything. Vivi is notably absent this time around, but Robin takes on her role without deviating from it at all. So she's forced to stay behind in the village with Usopp despite being a much more capable character. Vivi originally chose to stay behind because she, for one, had greater responsibilities with Arabasta she needed to be safe for, but two, felt like she would slow everyone down. In this, Robin says she'll come along, but Sanji tells her to stay behind because it'll be faster with fewer people. So what exactly is the point of replacing Vivi with Robin? There is none. So if Vivi is gone, then you'd imagine who takes the place of Karu. Yep, Frankie spends his time on the ship with Zoro. So yeah, realistically, not much is actually changing. They've just reskinned 2 of the characters and updated the animation. The biggest change actually came from a new antagonist they added, Wapple's older brother Mushuru. As his name would suggest, in both appearance and power, he is very mushroom-oriented. He possesses the Noko Noko no Mi, or the mushroom fruit, which gives him the power to produce and control poisonous spores from his body. But it has one massive weakness: fire. The spores can be completely burned away and nullified by a simple flame. Apparently, as a caveat to his devil fruit, every 10 years he can release a large amount of spores within his body which function much like a massive bomb. In this movie, he's the reason that Drum Island became a country of advanced medical science. 20 years ago, he wanted to test the limits of his power and detonated his spore bomb from the castle, which killed a lot of Drum Island's residents. As punishment, he was banned to the Kingdom of Fire, where his power is useless. From there, the story is the same. Wapple became king, monopolized the doctors, and fled when Blackbeard showed up. But in this, he fled to get his older brother to help fight back against him. However, by the time he got back, Blackbeard and his men were gone, so he figures he may as well use the spore bomb on the citizens who defy him. He's where the bulk of the change comes from. Though it's still not that much. Most of the runtime is still dedicated to retelling Chopper's backstory. He gives the audience something new to bite on in the beginning and change up the end fight. But unfortunately, despite being a what-if story, it's still pretty much just a recap. The purpose of a what-if story is to imagine what if things were different, not what if things were exactly the same, just a new person was there. So unfortunately, this is another hard one to recommend unless you specifically want to revisit the Drum Island arc just with a new angle. But fortunately, following these two less than ambitious recap films, the One Piece movies would go through a sort of renaissance.
One Piece the movie.
言っといでバカ息子
One Piece Strong World is the first of the new era of films. These are the ones that you've probably seen around the most. If anything, they're the only ones you can find. It's upsetting. This is when the films really started picking up steam and earning massive box office numbers, and that was largely helped due in part because for the first time, Oda picked up the pen. For as good or as bad as some of these films have been, one of the biggest turnoffs to them from viewers is just how much they can actually be considered as fanfiction. At the end of the day, not as many people have an interest in seeing someone else puppeteer the Straw Hats. Strong World wasn't the initial idea Oda had when making this movie. When he first started thinking about what people expected from him, he thought that they'd want an emotional tale, something that would draw them to tears as he had done so many times before. The film was originally called The Crystal Ship's Log, but after he finished the script, something just wasn't sitting right with him. He'd written enough stories to know that you can't force emotion as a goal. It had to be sprung up from the life of the characters, and to do that you need time, something that just isn't freely available for a movie. So he scrapped the whole thing and decided to focus on a simpler approach: action. Boys are the predominant audience for One Piece, and their enjoyment can often be boiled down to much simpler things: the fights, the action, just the overall cool factor of what's on screen. And Oda felt that that was right for this film, as those were the spectacles that he enjoyed when he was younger. Something else that was unforeseen as a result of completely changing the movie was the antagonist, Shiki the Golden Lion. Originally, he was supposed to be a character that was name-dropped during Whitebeard and Shanks' meeting as a notorious pirate who was wreaking havoc during Roger's era. His mention wound up getting cut as Oda felt it was too much information at the time. But then one thing led to another, and he was set to be featured in this movie, a decision he actually regretted. Oda didn't think he'd be visually introducing him anywhere near this soon. We are still pre-time skip, and this is supposed to be someone who was causing Roger and Whitebeard some problems. We're talking Emperor level status. This is maybe 10 years earlier than he had hoped. It's also a big reason he felt like he had to write this movie. Shiki's too much of an important character that it was just too worrying to let him be handled by another writer. As a result, this is the only film that Oda directly wrote himself. All of the other ones he had a hand in, mostly designing a few characters and costumes, but it was important to him that Shiki was done right. So, in preparation, Oda made sure to casually name drop him during the Impel Down arc as the only prisoner to ever escape. making sure to still give him that notorious reputation in the world. That was done in February of 2009. The movie was supposed to be released in spring, which wasn't too far out from the name drop, but the movie got pushed back till December. The film opens up with the Straw Hats reading news of attacks that are currently going on in the East Blue, but they're immediately stunned silent when they spot Shiki's ship flying above them. Being the nice navigator she is, Nami warns him of an approaching storm, but Shiki's men disagree with her assessment. Wouldn't you know it, Nami was right. After punishing his own navigator for his ineptitude, he descends onto the Sunny to meet her. It is here we learn the power of his devil fruit. The Fua Fua no Mi allows him to levitate and manipulate non-living objects that he's touched. It's why his ship is a massive flying island. His devil fruit allows him to literally travel the seas however he wants. After our characters tell him that they intend on returning to the East Blue to help out their hometown, Shiki offers to take them there personally as a thanks. They first stop off at Merviel, the base of operations for Shiki's Golden Lion pirates. All of the islands are suspended via his power, but in truth, the whole place is a testing ground for his scientist Indigo to experiment on new drugs. But anyway, as you could have guessed, it was all a trap. A skilled navigator like Nami must be part of his crew, so he kidnaps her and sends the rest of the Straw Hats crashing down to the dangerous lands below, separating everyone. Something else Oda wanted to do when changing the premise of this movie was a hero saves the heroine story. It went with the fun, adventure-esque story he wanted to do, and so Nami naturally fell into that role, even though it's not the first time it's been done, even in the movies. With everyone split up, Usopp and Sanji are busy dealing with much of the wildlife, while Chopper is having to deal with Zoro's greatest enemy, a sense of direction. But in the midst of them being lost, they do come across a young girl named Zhao who leads them to her village. She tells us all about a poisonous plant called Daft Green. That stink is so powerful it keeps all of the dangerous animals away. But long-term exposure to it is poisonous. Zhao's grandmother fell ill to it and she was out looking for a cure, the IQ plant. But Shiki has taken pretty much all of them for his experiments, making them a rarity. Fortunately, Usopp and Sanji accidentally fell into the village as well, reuniting the pair. Meanwhile, my favorite trio, Robin, Frankie, and Brooke, are off on their own side quest as they usually are. They're the ones who uncover Shiki's true motive. Turns out, he holds a vendetta towards the world government for the execution of Roger. He believes that he should have died at the hands of a strong pirate and not some weak marines. He went to Marineford in the past to demand that they allow him to be the one to execute him. But Garp and Sengoku stopped him. It's how he was imprisoned in the first place. Since then, he's held malice towards the East Blue as a whole for being the weakest sea where Roger died. So, his plan is to unleash all of these mutated animals on the East Blue and force the world government to submit. To be honest, it's an okay motivation. The movie doesn't exactly make clear his personal ties towards everything. For some reason, you get his backstory in an OVA called Strong World Episode 0. It's tough because I know movies are pressed for time, and going off on a backstory tangent as One Piece loves to do doesn't exactly work well for the flow of a film. But it does hamper it from a standalone perspective because this is Shiki's whole motivation. Not getting this in the film itself winds up making his goal feel less personal and a lot more generic because without it, it seems like all he wants is supervillain world domination, instead of a personal vendetta that he has stake in. So it's unfortunate that his backstory isn't included. As for Nami, she's making moves of her own. As is typically normal for her being kidnapped in the movies, her captor tries to make her feel comfortable by giving her a taste of the good life, of course without the ability to be free. She winds up befriending one of Dr. Indigo's experiments, and the two wind up escaping where they run into Luffy. He nicknames the duck Billy, and the three eventually find their way to the village where most of the others reside. But Shiki has cameras everywhere, so he tracks her down to retrieve her. This is where we get our first real clash with Shiki. Animation-wise, it's a beautiful setting. It's incredibly cinematic. The fight itself is not great. It's the midpoint in the movie and their first real bout, so they have to lose, which they do. They get a few hits off on him, but it's a largely one-sided bout. To spare both their lives and the East Blue, Nami agrees to join Shiki's crew in exchange. This is another one of those reflections to the past that Oda wanted to do. The parallels to Nami's situation with Shiki heavily reflect what she was going through with Arlong. But in that case, she had to reach a breaking point before she asked Luffy for help. But at this point with these characters, she already knows Luffy is gonna help. She already has faith in him. So she leaves behind a message telling the others not to go after him because he's too strong and they'll die. But if they don't believe her, then prove her wrong and save her. And this is where we get one of the coldest intros the Straw Hats have ever gotten. This is some real Yakuza type shit. They show up in full-blown suits and ties, strapped to the gills and guns, and just start blasting. I mean, this is some real mobster type shit. Like, this is for real what you'd expect out of the Doflamingo family. I even love, even though I'm sure it was completely accidental because they were years apart, that Luffy and Doflamingo have the inverse colors on a similar design, where Luffy wore a red shirt with a black tie, while Dofi used to wear the opposite in his past. As you'd expect, this is full-blown action sequences left and right, with Luffy defeating Shiki by using third gear with a massive electrical charge. The movie ends with the Marines there to sweep up any of the remaining crew members, and the island's residents are freed. Even if slightly mutated now with the power of flight, overall, it accomplishes what the movie sought out to do: deliver a fun, adventure-esque story. It's not the most plot-heavy nor the most emotional, but it's a good ride. The biggest unfortunate to it is the same thing that Crocodile suffered from, and that's being bested by a not very progressed cast. Second and third gear Luffy made sense here because that's as far as our characters were. I think it's the biggest reason Oda says he regrets using Shiki here, because he knew that he should have been far more of a dangerous individual. But again, the movie is not canon while Shiki is. So on the cards, he is still somewhere out on the Grand Line, and maybe we'll be able to see what he's really capable of. While I did say the One Piece films went through a sort of renaissance after the episode of specials, that comes with a bit of an asterisk because of 3D Straw Hat Chase. This is the most standout film visually from all the rest. As you can tell, the whole thing is in CGI for, I don't know the reason. They never did anything with it afterwards, making it the only one of its kind. Maybe these were character models for one of the video games and they wanted to shake things up a bit? Who knows? It's the shortest of all of the films at only a 30-minute runtime, again making it more akin to being a special or an OVA, but it got a theatrical release. The plot of this film is incredibly simple. It opens up on a former pirate captain named Schneider with his last remaining crewmate and companion, Buzz, his dog. Unfortunately, nearing the end of his life, he doesn't want his friend to see him go out like this, so he tries disbanding the crew. But Buzz remains ever loyal. After catching wind that the Straw Hats were in town, he tells Buzz that they can remain a crew if he steals Luffy's straw hat, a task that he believes impossible, and thus Buzz will have to give up. But Buzz isn't just a normal dog. He possesses the Tori Tori no Mi, or the Model Eagle Zoan class Devil Fruit. It's the first non-canon Zoan type we've seen, and he uses the power to the best of his ability. On a calm night, he sneaks onto the Thousand Sunny and successfully manages to steal Luffy's straw hat, which sends him into a frenzied panic. Fortunately, Usopp was awake that night and saw the strange bird, leading everyone to begin searching for it. They do come across Schneider coincidentally, who's passed out from his condition worsening, and Chopper brings him back to the ship. But as the name of the movie would suggest, the bulk of this film is literally a Straw Hat chase. It's a lot of movement, and if I didn't know any better, I would have assumed that this whole thing was a proof of concept for the animators to display their ability and showcase what they're capable of with these character models. But again, I don't know. With Schneider on the ship, he awakens and is shocked to learn that Buzz has taken him up on his challenge to steal the straw hat, and everyone learns the misunderstanding of what's going on. That is, everyone except Luffy. Luffy winds up chasing Buzz into a marine headquarters where the two are trapped. Of course, with Buzz being innocent, Luffy and everyone can't have a final duel with him, so this is where we get the final fight. Zoro does what he definitely cannot do, and that is cut through some Sea Prism stone. Maybe one day he'll be able to do that, but this is still pre-time skip crew, so not yet. But again, with that said, this fight is actually pretty awesome. Despite what may be your initial knee-jerk reaction to look at the 3D animation and think it looks weird, it actually pulls it off extremely well. Especially if you're comparing it to the video games, it's better than any of the video game cutscenes. It's actually kinda sad that this was the only project they did anything with it. But anyway, the Marines are defeated and Luffy gets his straw hat back. We learned the reason Schneider was dying was because he had a fork lodged in his throat from eating too fast. So he and Buzz can continue being a crew. Straw Hat Chase may not have the most depth behind the story it was telling, but it was fun for only 30 minutes. Definitely worth checking out.
One Piece 3D Mugiwara Chase.
Going back to the more traditional format of films, Film Z was the 12th movie in the franchise. This time we were ditching the typical format of pirates going against other pirates. This time it was the Marines. A former Marine to be exact. Zephyr, ever since he was a kid, loved to play the role of hero, so naturally he joined the Marines when he was of age. By the age of 28, he mastered armament hockey and earned the nickname of Black Arm. He was an admiral during Gold Roger's era, but after his wife and child were murdered by a pirate, he stepped down to become an instructor. He did this for quite a while, over 20 years, but eventually his entire division was slaughtered by a single pirate, with only 2 of his subordinates surviving. Ein and Binz. His arm was also severed in the process. The government eventually gave him a new mechanical arm known as the Battle Smasher. It's notably made of sea prism stone, making it incredibly useful against Devil Fruit users. And that's notable because with it, he stepped back into action. This time alongside Ein and Binz, and together they all hunted pirates with devil fruits. But despite everything he went through, his final straw was when the pirate who severed his arm and murdered his platoon was invited to become one of the 7 warlords. This was too much for him, so he renounced his position and left the Marines to form his own brand new faction, the Neo Marines. Their hope is to eliminate all pirates and end the Great Pirate Era by literally destroying the New World and everyone in it. How? Well, with a weapon of mass destruction said to have a power capable of rivaling that of the ancient weapons known as Dynastones. They're a naturally occurring resource that, if ever exposed to oxygen, will explode. They're more akin to bombs and nukes than any other explosive. It is for that reason that they've been outlawed and instead used to defend what are known as the endpoints. They're non-canon and exclusive to the movie, so don't worry if you've never heard of them. But apparently there are 3 islands in the New World which each sit above a gigantic magma chamber. Should all 3 islands be destroyed, then the vents that connect the 3 will become active and completely destroy everything in the New World, thus making it exactly what Zephyr is looking for. The movie opens up with him and his Neo Marines invading the first endpoint, Fur's Island, which coincidentally also happens to be the base where the Marines conveniently keep all of the Dynastones stored away. Kizaru is there to try and fend him off, but is forced to flee when he shattered one which destroyed the whole island. This is where the Straw Hats come in. While out at sea, Luffy had spotted Zephyr adrift at sea and so brought him on board, rescuing him. While their initial reaction is nice, it isn't long after mentioning they're pirates that things turn hostile. The situation is made worse when Ein and Binz arrive as well. Usopp, Chopper, and Brook are all neutralized by Binz's vines. I didn't mention this, but both of them have devil fruit powers. Binz possesses the Mosa Mosa no Mi, which allows him to grow and control plants at an accelerated rate. Meanwhile, Ein possesses the Moto Moto no Mi, which reverts the age of anything she touches exactly 12 years. Nami, Chopper, Robin, and Brook are all affected by this power. But of course, Brook is a bit too old to be changed. Nami was reverted back to the age of 8, Chopper 5, Robin 18, and Brook 78. But anyway, Zephyr spares Luffy's life due to his relation and respect of Garp, while Frankie uses a Kuda Burst to escape. From here, the movie is pretty straightforward. There's 3 endpoints, and each endpoint pretty much makes up a third of the movie. The second island, also known as Second Island, first it was Fur's Island, then Second, you'd imagine what the final island's gonna be called, is again very simple. Z isn't a mysterious character who the Straw Hats have to figure out or uncover information. They're just going to where he is so they can stop and fight him. They're not split up as a crew, none of them have been captured, so it's literally a waiting game until he shows up. Our characters even go to a hot spring because they're just waiting. Robin, Usopp, and Nami go out to collect information and learn about his motive to destroy the endpoints. Kuzan does make an appearance, but it's more so flash over substance. Being his former instructor, he used to look up greatly to him, and so now he's more so interested in seeing what he's become instead of inherently doing anything about it. Zephyr, as expected, eventually shows up and destroys the endpoint, dooming the island. I'm gonna be honest, you kind of expected there to be more capable Marines at this point if the fate of the new world was dependent on these 3 islands not being destroyed, and he already destroyed the first one. But anyway, Zoro and Sanji's fights result in a draw while Luffy is defeated with Z taking his hat. Much to the confusion of our characters, Kuzan goes on to explain Zephyr's motive in destroying the endpoints and bringing an end to the new world, while giving them an eternal pose to the final island in the process. What was initially a goal just to return everyone to their normal age has turned into a fight for the fate of the new world, which then leads us to our final battle. Luffy against Zephyr, Zoro against Ain, and Sanji against Bins. I feel like this is unfortunately again one of those scenarios where the antagonists don't have a large enough crew, so the rest of the Straw Hats are forced to mob the smaller enemies. Like, since Robin joined, they haven't had enough enemies to go around, let alone with Brook and Frankie there as well. To me, it always feels like they're underutilized. But Frankie does get his time to shine here. After the Neo Marines are cleared out, the actual Marines show up with some modified pacifistas, and Frankie takes them on with his Frankie Shogun. But anyway, Zoro defeats Ain, restoring everyone to their original age, and Sanji defeats Bins. Meanwhile, Luffy's battle with Zephyr turns into a boys being boys type of moment. They throw fists and beat each other up until Luffy kinda wins, and the two respect each other, I guess. It's kinda weird, to be honest, for someone who wanted to literally commit genocide, and Luffy's just chill with him. But that all doesn't matter because Kizaru and a bunch of other Marines show up. So Zephyr chooses to sacrifice himself and pay the price for his actions. Kuzan separates everyone, giving him his final battlefield, as well as freezes all of the remaining Dynastones, preventing them from exploding. Zephyr is ultimately killed and put to rest, with Kuzan consoling both Ain and Bins, remarking what an incredible man he was. This was more so a movie about Zephyr than the Straw Hats, and I think that's the differentiator as to whether or not you're going to enjoy it. It's not exactly the most emotional or even relevant if you're viewing it from our character's perspective. It changed quite a bit of lore with the endpoints, but also in the fact that Zephyr in this trained all of the admirals and Smoker and Ina and all of them. You know, a big reputation in the Marines. Alone, he's a pretty decent character, and this is his film. But I do have to mention the music that is present in this. I did not expect to hear Avril Lavigne. Apparently, Oda is a big fan, and since she loves Japan as well, he got her to make not one, but 2 songs to use in this movie. And strangely enough, they're not even her songs. They're both covers that he requested. How You Remind Me by Nickelback and Bad Reputation by Joan Jett.
This time I'm mistaken. I've overhanded you are breaking. And I don't give a damn about my bad reputation.
He requested that she do a cover for both of them, and she did. So if you've ever listened to Avril Lavigne cover either of those songs, just know that they were made specifically for One Piece. Wild. One Piece film gold is if you took Eldorago's love for gold in the first film and mixed him with Doflamingo to get a dickhead obsessed with gold. Similar to the previous films in which supplemental material had been made in the form of episodes or manga, Film Gold had a whole movie-length prequel special made called Heart of Gold. But fortunately, unlike Strong World, in which a lot of the backstory was included from the movie, which is vital to understanding Shiki as a character, Heart of Gold is not required to watch before seeing this. It leads into the events of the movie, but it is very self-contained. I would go through the whole of Heart of Gold here, but I'll probably make a separate video on all the specials, so I'll keep them separate for now. The antagonist of this film, Guild Tesoro, is actually a fairly interesting character, despite only getting a 1, maybe 2-minute backstory towards the end. But allow me to set the stage. He grew up in a very poor and unloving home, his father crippled by gambling debt, and a mother who wasn't supportive of his dream of being a star. He eventually ran away into a life of crime. But he eventually met a woman named Stella. She was a slave set to be sold at the human shop. He fell in love and sought to buy her freedom, but due to her hatred of crime, he had to do it the honorable way. He worked hard for his money, but she was inevitably bought by a world noble. In retaliation, Tesoro attacked him, but obviously didn't get past their security. He too wound up being enslaved, branded, and constantly mocked and abused by his master. Stella eventually died 2 years later, and traumatized by the fact that he was unable to buy the freedom he promised, he became obsessed with money. His own freedom was found 5 years later during Fisher Tiger's attack on Marie Joie. So, after escaping, he fell back into the life of crime. He turned the brand on his back into a star as a symbol of his transformation into a gilded king. 3 years after the fact, the Don Quixote pirates held an auction for the Golgol fruit, which allows a user to manipulate gold. But Tesoro sent criminals to the auction to kill those present and steal it. This angered Dofi as he didn't actually intend on selling it and thus sent assassins after him multiple times, but they all failed. After a few more years, Tesoro's fame actually grew to a point that he chose to instead use him as a business partner. He gave him connections to both the world government and the black market, and with his illegal business dealings in place, he grew to become incredibly rich and built the Grand Tesoro, a massive golden metropolis that's actually acknowledged by the world government as an independent state. It even has to pay a heavenly tribute to maintain its status. But the main purpose of the Grand Tesoro is to function as a casino. The idea is to drive visitors into severe gambling debt and force them to pay it off by working. He's apparently amassed 20% of all the money circulated in the world. Still not as impressive as Woonin's 33%, but not bad either. It's actually a pretty interesting contrast as to what they thought was an impressive percentage of wealth to have post-Dressrosa, as opposed to post-Syrup Village. Anyway, the reason Tesoro wants all of this money is to subjugate the world nobles themselves. He believes if he is able to amass enough wealth, he'll be able to replace them as the most powerful person in the world, since money is power. Unlike your average pirates, Tesoro doesn't exactly have a normal crew as he does executives who work under him. Baccarat is the concierge who greets everyone and gives tours to special guests who arrive. She possesses the Luck fruit that gives her the ability to steal the good luck of anyone she touches. In turn, the person whose luck she stole will be met with a series of unfortunate events and accidents, something you'd imagine is extremely handy in rigging a casino. With the luck she steals, her own personal luck goes up, making her nearly invincible. Dice is a dealer for an aptly appointed dice game. He's incredibly strong and an insane masochist. He loves being harmed whether from himself or for others. It makes me uncomfortable. And finally, there is Tanaka, who works as security. He too has a devil fruit. The Through fruit allows him to pass through solid objects, and as you'd imagine, that's very useful in patrolling a city. I think this setup is actually one of the better ones out of all the films. The Straw Hats arrive at the Grand Tesoro and are welcomed in like all with open arms. And hook, line, and sinker, they fall for their trap. They're given an extravagant tour, go on a spree of winning streaks before being taken to the VIP lounge for the chance to become billionaires. But after Baccarat steals Luffy's luck, he loses the bet and they can either pay off their debt or work it off. Of course, everyone's not so compliant with the obvious cheating that they told them that they did, but it's only after Zoro nearly gets turned into a gold statue that everyone has to comply. Part of the trap of the Grand Tesoro is upon pirates' arrival, they're all showered in gold shavings, an act disguised as showmanship as part of the show for the city. But it actually coats everyone who entered in Tesoro's gold, giving him literal control over everyone who enters, and why no one can simply run away from being a slave. Nami winds up agreeing to get him the money by the next day, and if not, Zoro will be executed and the rest of the Straw Hats will remain slaves forever. I do actually like that Zoro is the one here that needs saving. Not all plans can be brute forced, and despite his swords, he's not exactly the sharpest tool in the shed. So in replacement, Nami gets a lot more room to shine. And that's also partially because she runs into an old cat burglar she used to know named Karina. While she's currently working under Tesoro, what she's really after is the supposed treasury where he keeps the 20% of the world's currency. Such a thieving idea is a literal gold mine, but also the perfect way to pay off their debt and free Zoro. If they really wanted to, they could have brought back the Thief Brothers as well from Clockwork Island. Not saying they should have, but they could have at least given them a cameo. So the movie winds up being more of a heist film, and it's actually incredibly fun. Going undercover, disguises, stealth. Brook gets caught by the sensors, but it doesn't register because he's not a living creature. They all get to dress up as celestial dragons. I'm not sure if I was keeping track, but I think this film has the most costume changes out of any of the other movies or individual arcs. They completely change like 4 times. It's actually great. Anyway, Luffy and Frankie, who were off on their own team, wound up getting caught and sent down to the Golden Prison, an ironic torture for the prisoners as they are surrounded by nothing but gold. Literally. There's no food, no water, just the gold that they came to the Grand Tesoro to obtain. Here they are met with the legendary gambler Raise Max. He tells Luffy that the only way to remove Tesoro's gold is to travel down a large pipe to a tank filled with seawater. But the journey is too risky due to the bats and a very large fan. I think I was taking this part a bit too seriously when I first watched because at face value, it is ridiculous. They treat this fan, and it's just a fan. It's made of sea prism stone, but it's still just a fan. Like it's a real villain. It's kicking his ass. They can't get past it, but they won't give up. It's so overdramatic and goofy, it was ridiculous. But somehow Raise Max is able to stop the fan, which is perfect because it sets the Straw Hats' plan in motion. Everyone winds up getting caught and captured, but they were never really after the treasure to begin with. The plan from the get-go was to always get sent down there so they could switch the underground pipes to shoot out seawater which washed everyone clean of his golden flakes, meaning that they can fight back. Honestly, the fights are nothing too special. Tesoro is defeated and ultimately arrested, while the Grand Tesoro itself is claimed by Karina, an insane burglary on her end. When you analyze Guild, I think he is a very good antagonist. While the backstory itself is brief, you can see how he became the person he is. The trauma of being unable to buy Stella's freedom and what he went through as a slave caused him to grow up to be obsessed with money. He treats others like they're slaves and developed a god complex. Even the fact that the noble who owned him refused to let him smile developed into him deciding when others can smile. This is his get back for never having any money or power in his life, and instead of taking it out on the world nobles, even though his plan is still to inevitably punish them, he's instead causing the lives of vastly more innocent people to be miserable. I think he's one of the most interesting antagonists the films have to offer, but I don't think it translates as interesting in the final product itself. His backstory, as I mentioned, is quick flashes, maybe 1 or 2 minutes total. So for most of the film, you're dealing with a version of him that's just a dickhead, and being just that, he doesn't really stand out. But still, it's a pretty decent film all around, especially if you're a Nami fan.
One Piece Film Gold.
You know, for as much as these One Piece films have been doing their best at telling an isolated story in an attempt to stay on par and feeling like it belongs with the main series, have you ever wondered, what if they just said fuck it and went balls to the wall fan service? One Piece Stampede is the 14th film that was released in 2019. It was a commemoration for the anime's 20th anniversary, and what better way to do that than throwing a big party where everyone is invited. The Pirate Festival's in town, made by pirates for pirates. It's an event held every so often where crews from all over the world come together to compete in a massive treasure hunt for some long-lost treasure. One hasn't been held in, 20 years. This time around, the treasure is something that every pirate wants, a treasure that belonged to Gold Roger. Just about every character you can imagine is here. Pick an arc, pick a filler, pick some random obscure background character you saw once, well, you'll probably spot them again. I'm not gonna go through everyone, but since we're in the spirit of the movies, you can see Baccarat from the last film spending some time with Gadats. Schneider and Buzz are spotted at a table enjoying the festivities. The Tea Room Pirates and Brief from Baron Omatsuri are seen with Zhao from Strong World on the Sea Train. Apparently Borodo from Clockwork Island is somewhere, as is Ratchet from Mecha Island, Shiraya from Dead End Adventure, and there's probably even more. To say this movie is packed is kinda the point, but realistically, it's not as if most of them do anything anyway. The majority can be chalked up to simple cameos you can see in the background. But that's not to say no one does anything. There are still dozens of big players actively involved in the main plot. The film centers around a former member of Roger's crew, Douglas Bullet. He's a loose cannon, figuratively and literally. He's a very aggressive and violent person who loves to fight and is always seeking to satiate that desire. He grew up on a war-torn island, constantly in battle and frequently betrayed. By the age of 14, he destroyed his entire country and attracted the attention of the world government. And by the age of 15, challenged Gold Roger to a fight, but lost for the first time. He admired his strength and so joined his crew as a challenger, hoping to one day defeat him in battle, but was never able to. After learning about his illness and figuring that being part of the crew was holding his strength back due to loyalty, he eventually left. After Roger's execution, he didn't know what to do with his life, and so rampaged through the seas until the world government was forced to take him down with a buster call. Garp, Sengoku, and many other pirates who Bullet had previously defeated all teamed up to stop him. And he's been imprisoned in the lowest level of Impel Down for the past 21 years. That was until Blackbeard freed everyone. The movie opens up with Blackbeard straight up refusing to allow Bullet on his crew because of how dangerous he is. Now 43 years old and at the peak of his strength, he's seeking to usurp the title of King of the Pirates and prove that he's the strongest. It's the only way he feels he can do so with Roger no longer being around. So he contacts an old pirate from his time, Buena Festa, to organize the Pirates Festival to lure in all of the strongest pirates so he can kill them and prove his strength. As for Buena Festa, he wants to usher in his own pirate era. But you know, despite being one big trap, he actually has put on a legitimate Pirates Festival with an actual treasure that Gold Roger owned. So it's not all a sham. I was hoping to see Kuro here, but as the man of 100 plans, I like to think that he actually saw through his trap and didn't show up because of that. Giving a detailed breakdown of this movie is actually incredibly difficult because the first 30 minutes is mostly dedicated to establishing the plot, but once Bullet shows up, everything is on site. The remaining hour and 10 minutes is all action. So of all the turn your brain off and enjoy the spectacle type movies, Stampede is it. You've got pirates, marines, revolutionaries, warlords, supernovas going against each other, teaming up, just throwing the whole kitchen sink at everyone. And everything is made even more hectic because the treasure that's being offered up is an eternal pose to Laugh Tale. Yep, a literal straight shot to the One Piece. So enemies become allies to get rid of Bullet, but they're still enemies, so it's not like they're all of a sudden friends. I've mentioned this before, but I love it when former enemies become allies, because then you get to see all the different types of synergies and creative combos that can be done. And Stampede is full of them. So can I describe the action to you? Not really. It's Bullet against the world. So anyway, Bullet does get defeated, and Luffy destroys the Eternal Pose. I think everyone could have seen that coming. He's made clear that he wants to earn that right to become King of the Pirates. And even in a flashback, Roger agreed. He detested the Eternal Pose's creation and threw it in the ocean. I don't know why he didn't just break it, but you know, we needed a plot. Stampede is tough to describe, but it is a fun movie. It's unfortunate that despite the number of characters, a lot of them realistically don't do anything, whether because of time or the cameos, or not having their stories played out like much of the supernovas. So there's a lot of characters, but a lot of them don't have the chance to shine. But Oda has said that what he has planned for the actual story when he gets there will be even bigger and grander than Stampede.
新時代はこの未来だ
While the One Piece films were steadily rising in both quality and popularity amongst fans, after the last few films, Oda had grown a bit tired of the type of antagonists he had been creating. They were all variants of older men. There's nothing wrong with that, but he had done it a few too many times in a row that it began to grow stale. So, for this new film, he wanted to centralize it around a brand new female character, one that the fans could love and could bring an entirely unique experience never before done in any of the prior movies. And thus, Uta was created. She's the adoptive daughter of Shanks and served as the Red Hair Pirate's musician when she was a kid. And for all you snobs, I know this is a movie and it's not canon, but like Shiki, Uta is a canon character. While the events of the film are self-contained to this movie, at the very least in both character design and origin, she is still, in canon, Shanks' daughter. So what does the film do with this? Well, she and Luffy were childhood friends and rivals, but one day when they all set out to sea, Uta didn't return. Shanks says that she left to become a musician, and in the time since, she has. She's become the world's most popular idol by streaming her songs via transponder snails. Her dream was to perform a concert for the whole world, and for the first time ever, she's hosting her very first live concert. As a result, it's attracted people from all over the world to watch it in person, and the Straw Hats are some of them. But due to her popularity, she's garnered the attention of some unsavory pirates due to her devil fruit. Big Mom has sent some of her family to kidnap her, but she's easily able to subdue them. One of the more standout aspects of the movie is that due to Uta being an idol, the movie is also like a musical. I don't think it actually counts as one because she's the only one singing, but she provides the soundtrack for the fight scenes and it weaves together very naturally and really elevates the movie into feeling unique and special. Plus the songs are awesome, so that's also a bonus. But things take a turn when she tries to tell Luffy to stop being a pirate, which he obviously refuses to do. She says that they can all stay at her concert forever, which is obviously quite an ominous statement to make, which everyone refuses. As a result, she attacks and manages to capture everyone but Luffy, who is saved by Law and Bartolomeo, who are also in attendance as fans. Well, at least Barto was.
I'm just a chaperone. For Beppo.
While confused as to what's going on, the group is continuously pursued by Uta until they meet the last remaining resident on the island, Gordon. He's the former king of the island and explains what exactly has gone on with Uta since Luffy last saw her and why she seemingly has such a vendetta against pirates now. You see, Elegia was known as the Island of Music. Shanks took her here to train her singing and hone her skills underneath the apprenticeship of the king. Her talent was immediately recognized and she was taken in. But there was a demon on the island known as Tot Musica who had been sealed however long ago. While imprisoned, it is able to be released via a song, and its note sheets wound up in Uta's hands. Unbeknownst as to what it was, she accidentally wound up releasing Tot Musica on the island, which killed everyone. Not even Shanks and his crew were able to stop it. It was only resealed when Uta exhausted herself and her devil fruit was neutralized. To protect her from the guilt of what transpired, Shanks takes the blame for everything and leaves Uta on the island with Gordon so she could properly develop as a singer. But Uta didn't know that. She completely blanked on the whole event. She woke up to the sight of the Red Hair Pirates leaving her behind and, in her eyes, abandoning her. Betrayed and heartbroken, this is why she's so against pirates in modern day. She wants to free her fans from the misery of the world by bringing them into hers with her devil fruit, where they can all be happy, at least mentally. The Sing Sing fruit allows her to transport people's consciousness into an alternate dimension. Anyone who hears her singing will have their minds trapped in this virtual world, while their bodies remain unconscious in the real one. Since her power is only able to work so long as she's awake, she's been consuming wake shrooms, a poisonous mushroom which will keep her awake, but at the cost of her health. And she wants to keep everyone trapped here, or in her mind, freed forever. and everyone in attendance who's been listening to her music has already been trapped in her world. This is precisely why Uta's concert has garnered the attention of more than just her fans, but the world government, CP0, and SWORD are amongst those seeking to stop her as her reach expands upward of 70% of the world's population, and growing. And wait, is that? Yeah, it's Ganzack from One Piece's first animation. Going off on a tangent, Film Red was once again directed by Goro Taniguchi, who previously directed Defeat Him the Pirate Ganzack in 1998. And 24 years later, he made his return to the series to oversee this film. Ganzack got a little nod as one of Uta's victims. But anyway, due to Uta's growing influence, Kobe and Bluno are part of the main cast as well, which is great. We rarely get to see Kobe and Luffy interact, let alone work together, and he's become a much more capable and reliable person, which shows here. And as I've made clear, I'm a sucker for villains returning but being allies, especially for those who don't get the limelight as much. Bluno and Khalifa are fairly underused characters of CP0, but they're also two of my favorites. Khalifa really does get sidelined here like Helmeppo to Kobe, cause she's in the real world reporting what's going on. I wish she did more because I'm just a personal Khalifa simp. But Bluno's kind of an MVP. His Dordor fruit is very useful and he's quite chill about working with everyone. He is as nonchalant as can be. He and Kobe are able to travel undetected, and thanks to Brook's musical prowess, he's able to free everyone by singing the notes all of the characters have been placed into. The Straw Hats all travel to some underground ruins to learn more about the island's history, specifically the danger of Tot Musica, while Kobe hopes to negotiate with Uta to get her to do the right thing. He goes on to tell everyone about what she's doing and how they're trapped, which causes an uproar. Losing more and more control of both the situation and her mind, she turns everyone into inanimate objects hoping to calm things down, but she's kinda at her tipping point. And it is for that reason that she is too much of a threat to keep alive. Shanks and the other red-haired pirates arrive to help her out in the real world, but their situation is made difficult when the Marines show up. Uta is already threatening the lives of 70% of the world's population, and they can't let that number keep growing. So she needs to be taken out before it gets worse. I think this is one of the better Marine justifications that we've gotten. Sometimes it's easy to forget that the Marines are meant to uphold justice and, technically speaking, be the good guys. Cause like everything we wind up seeing them do is so easy to stand against them. But here, Uta really is threatening mass genocide. I get where they're coming from, like, we gotta take her out. But Uta loses control and unleashes Tot Musica. The only way to destroy it is to kill it both in the real world and in the dream world. So everyone in the dream world is working with everyone out of it to put an end to the monster. Everyone has to attack the same points at the same time. And how do they do this? Well, through Usopp, of course. I actually forget all the time that Usopp has observation haki. He's able to communicate with his father and coordinate attacks. Karakuri and other Big Mom pirates arrive as well to help out their allies trapped, and together they put an end to Tot Musica. But everyone is not freed. Uta rejects the antidote to cure her of the effects of the Wake Shroom and performs one last song to bring everyone back. The two reconcile, and Uta passes away. By the time Luffy wakes up, everyone is already departing, meaning that he'll have to cross paths with Shanks again some other day. That is so silly. This doesn't count as a reunion. We didn't technically meet and talk. This wasn't supposed to happen yet, so come meet me another day. Like, they're literally right there. Honestly, it's a very fun movie. While it is great getting more Shanks content, I think it does also suffer from the same things the Supernovas did whenever they make a non-canon appearance, in which they're not really allowed to exceed any power that they truly have because we haven't seen it. So they're obviously strong and going toe-to-toe with these Marines and Tot Musica and whatnot, but is that really what they're capable of? Are these really their movesets, or are these generic filler attacks until we see what they can do in canon? And I think it's right to assume that they have a lot more under their sleeve than what they were allowed in the film. But regardless, any Red Hair Pirates content is worth it. And I'm glad Usopp got his moment to shine. His reunion with his father was also a bit lackluster. Again, not this time apparently, but at least they talked. Uta may have died in this film, but like Shiki, she is still a real character in the main One Piece canon. I don't know whether it's confirmed or not if she will still have this devil fruit or what, but all I do know is that she is still Shanks' daughter. So time will tell what kind of role she'll play in the actual universe, and I think she'll be a great addition. Overall, the One Piece films have been full of some big hits that were truly groundbreaking, and some real stinkers. But they stand as history to the series. It's a shame that most of them aren't readily available, as I think fans would love to watch them. But what are your guys' thoughts? Do you have a favorite film amongst the lot? If so, which one and why? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, and if there's any other One Piece videos you'd like to see me make, let me know in the comments below, and until next time, I'll see you in the next video.